Hello everyone, my name is Kylie Cruz. I'm here with my guest Keny Alicea, and I'm part of the Labor Economics Studies group, and we're here to talk about the labor union. So how are you doing, Kenneth?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. So tell me a little bit about your work experience, and I know you were in the Air Force and things like that, so why don't you start off with that?
Well, I was in the Air Force for almost 10 years. Okay. I joined right out of high school, and I stayed in almost 10 years.
Okay.
The military kind of works like a union. I mean, you have protections there. I had like varied experience all over. I was all over the U.S. I was in the Philippines, kind of all over the Far East, working on airplanes mostly, flying on airplanes. I did a stint as a mechanic on fighters and on cargo airplanes, and I was a flight engineer on C-130s for a while. I ended up working avionics, like radios and radar, for like the last 3 years that I was in the service. And then once I got out of the military, I came back to Boston, and I initially wanted to become a police officer. That didn't work out, and I'm kind of glad about that. Because I really, really like being a firefighter.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And kind of what made you want to transition from the military into being a firefighter? Like what made you that decision?
I think my time in the military was up.
Okay.
And I didn't want to stay in there any longer.
Okay.
So, and just, I mean, a big part of it was that I didn't have my family because I was all over the place. I was never on the East Coast except for like North Carolina. And I just wanted to come back home.
Did you have like a spouse at the time?
No.
Did you have a kid at the time or anything like that?
I didn't have that. It was time for me to get out of the military. And so I got out. I didn't get married and have a kid until after I was on the fire department.
Okay, awesome. And in terms of your military background, did that help you in any way to become a firefighter?
Veterans get preferential treatment. So you get like extra points on the test, like 2 extra points, and you get put on a separate list just for being a veteran, which is kind of cool.
And obviously being in the military is way more rigorous than being a firefighter, but how can you compare kind of like the training levels? And was anything different, anything like surprise you when it came to transitioning to a firefighter?
In the military, you get ongoing training, but on the fire department we do as well. You know, sometimes they have what's called back to basics, where they take us down to the academy. We have a burn building that's all concrete, and they'll give us a certain scenario, whether it be, you know, fighting a fire in a basement or fighting a fire in a high rise. And they set a fire in there for us, and we go in and put it out, you know, and they'll give us a briefing beforehand, and then there's a briefing afterward where they critique, you know, our performance and give us pointers on whether or not we did well, and if we did anything that they want us to change or do better, they'll give us pointers on that. But we have ongoing training for everything. For EMS, we always have CPR and dealing with all types of medical, especially overdoses. Okay. Yeah, that's a big one now.
Wow. I didn't even know that firefighters like had to deal with that kind of stuff.
Well, the majority of us on the fire department are EMTs.
Oh.
Like, we have more EMTs on the fire department than Boston EMS has.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's probably like 1,100 of us.
Oh, okay.
But when we respond, we're just like the police officers respond as first responders, and we respond as first responders, but we're trained to the EMT basic level. Yeah.
Right, awesome. And now let's talk about more of like the community in terms of, the military. You kind of have a brotherhood or a sisterhood. Do you feel the same way when it comes to like your firefighter brothers and sisters, and how does that kind of work?
Well, yeah, it's kind of the same thing. You're always looking out for, the person next to you, whoever your team is going in. And we generally follow that team concept when going into a building. You want to go in with somebody and you want to come out with that person too. So it just depends on the scenario. Like, we don't have a script for it. When we go to a fire, this fire is not going to be just like that fire. So we never know what we're going to run into. That's probably one of the things that I like most about the job, that every day is going to be different.
That's awesome.
So it keeps it interesting.
Talk to me about the facility and like your firehouse, the difference between like your firehouse and kind of like where you were living when you were in the military. And
when I was in the military, when I first got in the military, it was like a dorm situation, kind of like in school, and generally you have your room with a roommate. Once you become a sergeant, you usually have your own room, or you can move off base. And towards the end of my military career, I had my own place. The situation at the firehouse is different. We do 24-hour shifts, so we're there for 24 hours at a time. So for all intents and purposes, we're living there, and that's why we have a kitchen facility and we have bunks and things like that. And I just try to keep myself busy when I'm there. When we don't have a call, I just try to keep myself busy. I'll work out. You can watch TV. I like to read, so I read a lot, or I'll play. I like to play musical instruments, so I'll do that.
That's awesome. Yeah. Let's talk about how like there's a difference. In the military, you're always working. You're always doing something, I would anticipate. And then going into the fire department, where you're not always going to get a call every day, every second, and you do have 24-hour shifts. Like, the difference between the military and how you're kind of always occupied, and the firehouse, where you kind of have to keep yourself occupied and keep yourself in shape and just do that for yourself. Like, how was that transition for you?
Well, it wasn't hard for me, just because even the similarities between the military and being on the fire department is that you're always preparing for something so that you're ready in case something happens. You never know when it's going to happen, but they always have things planned for you, especially in the military. Just because there's nothing going on doesn't mean that we don't have things going on. So I used to work in an inspection dock where big hangar, we'd have 2 or 3 airplanes in there, and we would tear them apart, inspect everything, anything that needed to be changed, whether it was like a time change or whether it was something that had broken down and needed to be changed. And then we'd put the airplane back together and send it off. We test it before it goes off to have somebody actually fly it. We're running the engines, checking hydraulics, electrical, everything. And then it goes off to fly. On the fire department, there's certain things that we have to do every day. We don't have a maid, so we have to clean the firehouse. We have to inspect the truck and check all our equipment, because in case anything happens, you have to make sure that this piece of equipment works and that piece of equipment works, because you can't be iffy about something working, or when you get to a situation, you don't have time to mess around.
Let's talk about kind of like the benefits you had getting out of the military. Did you have like a pension?
I still have veteran status, but I don't have a pension because I only did just short of 10 years. So I don't have a pension, but like if I wanted to use VA benefits, I could. I don't, because I have great health insurance with the fire department and stuff, and I figured you can just leave that for people that actually need it, you know, and I don't, so I don't use it. If you take a civil service exam in Massachusetts, then you're on a separate list. So it gives you a leg up, you know, guys that are just getting out of the military, you know, they may have been gone for 2 or 3 years, and now they're trying to get back into the workforce, and there are people that have been here, like already working, or that are trying to get in there. This puts you like ahead of the game, you know, it puts you ahead of them. I think it's a good thing. It's a good benefit to have. So if you join the military, you serve your country.
And I think that's really important. The fact that you go out and you risk your life and you do all these things. When you come home, you should be able to have something to, you know, sit back on and be able to work.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Just a lot of people, I've told people, I told my own son, I'm like, if you wanted to get on the fire department or the police department, you're gonna have to join the military because you're not gonna get on otherwise.
Yeah. When you're being a police officer, when you're being a firefighter, it just gives you that you know, that edge of when, because you're going into dangerous situations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, whether it be a fire, whether it be, you know, a shooting or stuff like that. I think it's really important to have, you know, those basic skills. I understand that, like you said before, like most of you guys are EMTs and things like that, and there's always things updating when it comes to like the medical field. Even, you know, new techniques to be like new firefighter techniques, I guess you would say. So how often do those things like update for you guys?
Well, we have training on a quarterly basis. So we're always, there's so much training you have to get in this quarter, and so much training in that quarter. And it's not just EMS things, because that's getting updated all the time. So whenever there's an update, they give us new protocols. So we have to go in to get the new protocols, so that we know, you know, you have to do this many compressions to this many breaths. And our protocol is different from like a civilian protocol, because we're responding at a higher level, even though it's just as a first responder. That's still a higher level than your average just civilian that doesn't know CPR. You know?
And is that something that you like about your job, is that it's kind of always, you're always kind of learning something new, always updating. It's not something where, you know, sitting at a desk and you're doing the same thing for the next like 25 years.
That would drive me crazy. Because that's just not the way that
you work.
Yeah. I like the fact that we tend to help people on a daily basis. Whether it's, I mean, I'm in the north end of Boston, and I love the neighborhood, and I literally help little old ladies cross the street.
That's awesome.
You know, because they're my neighbors. You know, so that's probably my favorite aspect of it, is that we go and we're helping people all the time.
Let's talk a little bit more about now, like the firefighters union, and how you get helped out, and like what the benefits are, and like your plan in retirement. Like, are you gonna feel secure? Are you gonna do you feel like you're not gonna have to worry too much when it comes to this union, and kind of like your backup when you're kind of over, or when it's over, and things like that? Just kind of go over that.
We have a union. It's a local 718 out of Boston, and it affords you different protections. You know, just being there's power in having numbers, right? So they negotiate our contracts and things like that. Are they perfect? No. So there are probably things that I could complain about, but if we didn't have a union, things would be worse. If we wanted to get certain things done, we probably wouldn't be able to get them done. As long as your union is working for you, then I'm a big fan of unions. Because if you're not in a union, then you have no protections.
Exactly.
You know, and then your retirement, like you were speaking about the retirement. The reason that we have the retirement is because of the union. You know, and it's not bad what we're gonna have. Me personally, I'm probably not going to do, I'm not going to go to 65. I could stay till I'm 65, but do I want to keep running into buildings when I'm 65? Not really.
Not so much.
Another thing that and the union offers this, because I was in the military, I can buy 4 years of my military time.
Oh.
And then that gets tacked on to whatever time I've done with the fire department. So to be fully vested, you have to do 32 years. Well, I can do 28 years and still be fully vested because I'm gonna buy 4 years of my military time. And I'll be gone in 8 years. Less than 8 years, I'll be retired and I'll be 60.
How many years have you been in a firefighter so far?
Yes, a little over 20 years now.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
It'll be 21 in October.
What union are you in again?
It's in Boston Local 718.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And nowadays, actually, not so many people are fighting for unions. And like you said, you know, there's power in numbers. What would you kind of tell people who are kind of like just not putting as much effort as they should be in a union?
You wouldn't have the protection of, I mean, if somebody wanted to just fire you, they could if you don't have union protection. So I'm a fan of unions. It's not perfect, but the world isn't perfect, you know, so it is what it is. But I'd rather be in a union than not. I think mostly for those reasons, because it offers you protections, and I mean, they're the ones that negotiate for different types of benefits, like your medical benefits and dental and things like that, insurance. Without that, you'd have to do it on your own.
I understand, like, a lot of people don't have that, like you said. They don't have, you know, pensions, they don't have a union, and you're just in a really good spot. And is that a reason why you haven't, you've been in the fire department for so long, like you said, like over 20 years?
Yeah, over 20 years.
20 years. Is that, you know, did you ever, at one point in your career, think of doing something else?
No, because when we started, I told you that I initially wanted to be a police officer, and I think the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'm not knocking being a police officer, because I know police officers, and you know, we have family that are police officers, but I really love being a firefighter.
Yeah, it was a better fit for you. In your time in the fire department and in that union, were there any points of struggle for the union? Any times you guys had to fight for things like higher pay or you know, the better work environment and things like that?
Definitely. Whenever you want a pay increase, you work for the city, and the city doesn't want to give you money. they don't want to give up money. So that's always a struggle, and it's a give and take, right? If you want this much of a raise, then you guys have to do this, or you may have to give up something in order to get a raise, or in order to get one type of benefit, you have to give up on another type of benefit. So it's always like a balancing act, and sometimes you get a good contract and sometimes you don't, and sometimes people may consider this a good contract because it benefits them more, whether it's like maybe an officer or like a chief, and then just a regular firefighter, the contract may not be as beneficial to them. So it's a give and take, and it's always a struggle because they never want to give the money. they never want to pay you more, and no matter how much they pay me, if I go into one fire a year, they're not paying me enough. And I like going into fires. I know that you have opportunities to do overtime. So how does that help you in terms of your paycheck at the end of the year? We get the overtimes. They seem to be coming around more now, but sometimes there are lean times where you're like, wow, I haven't seen an overtime in a while. The pay is good when you're getting time and a half, you know, or like if you get and overtime on holiday, and it's double time, you know, and who doesn't want extra money? Yeah, exactly, you know. And it normally goes around, it's probably more for the regular firefighters rather than the officers. They were like a smaller pool.
Okay.
And it seems that out in the field, we don't seem to get as much overtime as people from headquarters were getting, or like at the training academy. But it is what it is. You got to take the rough with the smooth, as far as I'm concerned. Usually it'll balance itself out. That doesn't always happen, but you have to like play the odds.
Yeah. And is that between you and your kind of coworkers, is it common for them to just kind of like pick it up right when they get it overtime? Or do you have some people who are just like, no, I'll just do my regular hours? Well,
most everybody wants to do overtimes, and there's a list. And you know, if you just had an overtime, then you can't expect to get an overtime again like that soon, because they have to go by the list and they have to call everybody. Or so like if there's an overtime available and I get skipped, I can call the union and put in a grievance for that. I can file a grievance because I got skipped, and they'll get to the bottom of that, and I may or may not get paid for that. Yeah, if I have a valid grievance, then they're literally going to pay me for that.
And things like that, because you're part of a union, you get to fight for it. So were there any other situations where, you know, you felt that like you were skipped, or you, I don't know, like you weren't paid enough, or something along those lines where you had to step up and be like, hey, you know, I deserve this, or anything, something like that?
Yes, I was treated a bit unfairly. I was called for an overtime, and I drove from home. There was just, you know how the traffic is in the morning.
Definitely.
Trying to get into Boston is absolutely insane. And I had to go from where I lived to the firehouse, get all my gear, and then go to another firehouse. And it was, I mean, if I have to go to West Roxbury, there's just no easy way to get there. and it's going to take a while, especially during a weekday. And by the time I got there, I was literally pulling up on the apron of the firehouse, and I got a phone call from the officer saying that the chief said that he had pulled the overtime from me and given it to somebody at that firehouse. I'm like, that's not fair. So I had to go to the union on that.
I need help.
Yeah, well, it's good to know that you can stick up for yourself. You know, you don't have to just take whatever
goes to you.
Yeah, they want to dish out. You know?
In some work environments, even with unions, it's kind of a lot of politics. Do you feel it's the same way in the fire department?
Absolutely. It's a lot of politics. Is a lot of nepotism. So it is what it is. Okay. I don't think you're ever going to get away from that. I mean, because it is political. You know, the commissioner has to deal with the mayor, and the mayor's dealing with the union, and
this is back and forth.
It's a back and forth all the time. Yes.
Awesome. And with your rank and stuff, because I know some people, they start out and they get to a certain rank, and then they're just like, after that, like, I'm good with what I'm at now, and I'll end with that. So what is your experience with that?
I'm still a firefighter. Earlier in my career, I wanted to be an officer, maybe, you know, just keep going up the ranks, but there were circumstances that kind of prevented that. There were things that were more important to me than studying for the lieutenant's exam, you know, and so I'm content to be a firefighter. I mean,
and that's totally fine.
Yeah, I still have time to, you know, study and take exams and stuff, but I don't know if I will. Yeah.
I know for certain jobs, when you go up in rank, you get a crazy pay cut, which kind of makes no sense.
You may take a pay cut, like even though a lieutenant makes more money than a private, if the privates are getting more overtimes, or we also do fire details, right? There are tons more fire details for privates than there are for officers, so that's a pay cut.
Yeah.
There's more overtime for privates than there is for the officers, so that's a pay cut. But they also do get paid more on a weekly basis, and like we're only guaranteed a certain amount of overtimes, you know, and anything else after that is you're in the bonus.
Okay.
If that's the route that you want to take, then knock yourself out. Put the time into the studying and move up the ranks.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I just wanted to thank you for sitting here and talking with me, Keny, and I appreciate your service, and just kind of everything you said was really important, so thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for watching.